I love our intro videos so much, and it also it also makes me remember. And I was so happy that we recorded and we shot that when I was in Sicily because I'm so tanned in that in that preview. It's so amazing, and this is what London does to you. Anyway, welcome back to our NoCodeOps live community show. Everyone, it's great to have you all here. Do let me know in the chat where you're joining us from today. Let me know if you're here from our NoCodeOps community. I would love to see you interacting as much as possible because we host these events every Thursday to make sure that our community members can network with one another. They can upskill with our amazing expert speakers that we invite every Thursday. And if this is your first time here, this is NoCodeOps, an international community for people working in operations and leveraging the power of no-code tools. And so if you've been with us for a while, I hope that you felt as if we're taking you onto this beautiful educational journey, because that's what we're trying to do. And so if you joined our episode last week, we talked about everything to do with database design, best practice on how to build your database. And that was with Alex from 9X, one of our amazing experts and friends. And today, very excited to be joined by one of the speakers that we had in the past. He's a superstar in the no-code space. I'm sure everyone watching today already knows him because his fame precedes his name. And so without further ado, let me get onto the stage. Sahil. Hi, Sahil. Great to have you back. I think we were chatting earlier on, and I was saying to you that anyone that joins the NoCodeOps community and kind of tells me, I ask them, how did you get into no code? Is there anything I can do to help? They always mention your name. They're always like, oh, I've learned, the foundations. I've learned so much from Sahil. And, I'm always so happy to have you back as a speaker here because I know that you're a big, everyone in our community loves you. And so it's great to have you back.
No, that's great to hear. Yeah, I don't know how much I've helped, but I try. Yeah, I've been talking about this stuff for a couple of years. I was talking to someone yesterday. They said, "Oh, we're gonna do this challenge." I was like, "Yeah, I did that in 2021." They're like, "What? 2021?" It's like, "Yeah." But yeah, I'm a nerd like that, so I like to try new stuff, and that's how I got into no code. But yeah, no, it's good to always come here and chat about all things no code.
And also, you're the founder at NoCode University. You have some amazing courses out there, which, anyone watching today, I will be sharing links and all the ways that you can connect with Sahil. So don't you worry about that. And as we get started, Sahil, I'm just gonna look in the chat for a moment, and I can see there's Steven from Toronto. You're
Oh,
in
hey,
Toronto right
I
now, aren't
am.
you?
Yeah. Hmm.
Nice. So, Stephen, Sahil also hosts some in-person events, right, in Toronto,
Yes,
and
yeah, it's
so.
called NoCode TO for NoCode Toronto. Our next one is actually next week, April 24th. Intro
Mhm.
to Webflow.
Amazing. And you do that with Andy, who's also a friend and member at NoCodeOps. Andy from Glide. Awesome. Great to see Rahul from Spain, Jared, Tali, Melissa from New Jersey. All the friends are here, which makes me feel a lot more at ease because it's great when you're surrounded by your community fans.
Yeah, you
Um,
need the crowd.
you need the crowd, and I love
Yeah.
this crowd so much. So Sahil, last week, I think you watched the episodes with Alex. We talked about best practice again on how to design your database, and so me and you were chatting about, okay, how do we then move one step further for our community? And so today we were going to show some use cases, and what else are we going to be learning from you?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I was thinking about what to present today, but Alex had done already a pretty good job with explaining the Airtable fundamentals, so I didn't want to like repeat myself here. So, but I have been meaning to share something about a project that I've been working on for a client. This is a boutique travel company, and they had some. They had a lot of pain in their process in their operations. So I've been helping them solve those challenges. And I haven't had a chance to talk about it, but I was really excited to share that. So I thought this is a perfect platform to kind of surface that, share what are the problems that this company was facing, and how we leverage Airtable and all those database design principles that Alex talked about last week to solve some of these problems. So it's not going to be an Airtable tutorial. It's going to be basically a case study of the problem, how I approach it, and then what is the company seeing on the other side in terms of the solution and the time saving.
Yeah, which is absolutely fantastic because I love this journey that we're going from learning the theory and the best practice into, okay, now that we've got that knowledge, how do we put it into practice? And that's what we're gonna see with it. And this is an actual real project that you
Yeah,
worked on. So that's gonna
yeah.
be
Still working
super
on it right
awesome.
now.
Awesome, awesome, great. Alrighty, should we get started then? And again, people watching in the audience, whether you're watching from YouTube, LinkedIn, X, do interact as much as possible. This is your opportunity for you to learn and get to know other people, but also get to interact with our guest speakers here. We have a little Q&A at the end of Sahil's presentation, so do stick around. But we also want to try and keep this as interactive as possible. So if you do have any questions or if you do want to chat throughout the event, do use that chat.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, just interrupt anytime. It's not a long presentation, but I'll start sharing here. Share the. Will it mirror if I share the entire screen, or you're gonna stop that?
Right now I can see, okay, I can see two screens. So when you give me, yeah, I can see it now.
Okay. All right, perfect. So I guess today's session was called "Streamline Your Ops with Airtable." I put a subtitle to it: "No more manual work." I mean, reality is there's always going to be some manual work, but we can try to reduce it as much as possible. Uh, yeah, I won't spend too much time introducing myself again, but and also this slide is always the most challenging for me because since I've quit my job about 2 years ago, I don't even know what to call myself: founder, developer. So yeah, I have a couple of businesses. I teach people how to do this stuff, and I also do it for my clients. So hence the two line items here: founder and solutions developer. Um, for my past experience, for those of you who don't know me, I'm a software engineer by training, and I've worked at several big companies in the US, at Deloitte, Expedia. I moved to Canada recently, so I've worked at a couple of startups here in Canada as well. But as I just mentioned, a couple of years ago, I went out on my own because I wanted to try different things. So now I serve small to medium-sized businesses, solve their problems. Basically, I help them automate and digitize their critical workflows. And then I also, as I said, I have NoCode University where I teach others the same skills that I use to help my clients. So that's about me. For today, we're going to keep it pretty straightforward. As I mentioned in the intro, we have a case study, and this is from a real project that I'm currently working on, and I'm going to show you behind the scenes. It's a big project. There's a lot of components to it. I won't be able to go into every single detail, but I've picked out 2 to 3 workflows that I think we can talk about today to give you an idea of how Airtable is helping in this case. And then finally, we'll have the Q&A and discussion towards the end. So let's talk about the problem. So remember, so this is a boutique travel company, and what that means is they create custom trips based on your requirements. So the travelers reach out, they say this is exactly what they want to do, and they handcraft the trips for them. So they pick it's a white glove service. They pick everything from where they're going to stay, what they're going to see, what they're going to eat, how they're going to come in, how they're going to go out. Every single detail is planned because it is a boutique travel company, and people here want an excellent service. So most of it is not repeatable, or it wasn't repeatable until now. So they had to do everything from scratch. So this is how it went. They reached out to me. They asked me, "Hey, we need help." I said, "Okay, what happened?" They said, "We are drowned in manual work, and this is preventing our growth because it seems like we're always just trying to go through a to-do list and never actually able to focus on growing the business because there's just so much work and we don't have enough people." I see. So I said, "Okay, let me see what I can do." So usually, I start asking them questions. Okay, what are the tools that you're using? I ask them like, how do you manage your data? So that was my next question. Where is all your customer and supplier data? And this is what they said in email. So they did not have, yeah. So they did not have a CRM. They did not have a database to manage the suppliers. They didn't have any database whatsoever. The best thing they had was a spreadsheet, which they basically copied every time they created a new trip.
Manually, like from the email, they would fill in the spreadsheet.
No, all manual. No automation.
Yeah,
Uh,
manually. Oh,
yes,
that's wild. I hope
yes,
that
yeah.
you're getting like a custom trip, as part of your payment after
I've
all
a-
the work.
I've asked them. Yes, exactly. So yeah, and this was my
No
reaction.
code
Okay,
retreat.
it's like, okay, okay. Takes a deep breath. It's like, okay, fine, it's all good. So, so I started talking to them, and so this is everything that they were doing manually, right? So their entire business, lead generation, creating quotes and proposals, invoicing, managing the suppliers, tracking the reservations, collecting traveler data, all the operations that go into running a trip, and it's a lot. And then once a trip is over, all the post trip wrap, all of it manual, spread across several different tools, and just yeah, not scalable at all. Okay, I'm still calm. It's like, okay, it's fine. We got this. And but the reality is this is extremely common. There's a lot of companies still out there, especially small to medium sized companies who are operating in spreadsheets. This is just a reality, and that's where the operators like us can help. We can use our expertise to help these businesses, and that's why I find like real meaning in my work, because it's not just that I'm earning by helping these people. I'm really helping these people. Like they're going to save a lot of time. They're going to they will be able to grow their business. So really, it's a great space to be in my opinion. So typically, when I get a client like this, my approach is let me open this diagram quick. So yeah, it goes through several stages, and this should not be anything new here, but just to quickly touch on it, first step always is listen, right? Like the client is right here, like they're feeling they need help. So the best thing you can do, and at least what I do, is I listen. I just listen a lot. I capture a lot of the details that they're going through, the pains, the workflows, and everything. Then I go back and I reflect, right? Like I map the workflows, I identify some things that can be automated, and just by listening and sort of starting to do this work, the client's already starting to feel slightly better, right? Like they're like, okay, someone is there to help, someone is listening, they understand our pain. And then once I've done some reflection, I've mapped the workflows, I identified what can be automated. Then I select the tools. We get into the design phase. I come up with an architecture. And then the most critical part is the database, the ERD, entity relationship diagram. This is how their data is going to be stored. So we have to make sure this is scalable, not just for today, but for years to come. And then eventually, once I have this design, I present this design, the plan, and what is the outcome they're looking at, right? So at this point, the client's already starting to feel better. And then finally, we get into the development phase, build the database, build the automations, build the front end, do the testing, and then go live. So
I love
clients
it
have
how I love it how the client is smiling and over the line of happiness with the front end, and up until the planning point is like, yeah,
yeah, they want
whatever
to
still.
see, yeah, they want to see stuff in action, right? Like they want to see things happening. So
Awesome.
yeah, so once they see some visuals, this is where people start to connect the dots. Oh, I see, this is going to save us so much time.
Mhm.
So yeah, so that's a process. So how it went with this client, right? So back here on the slides, there we go. So yeah, as I said, I followed my plan. I got on the calls, and this is the Miro board developed over time. But this was the discover part where I was just listening. I was listening to them. I was taking notes. I was capturing all the single details that they had to share, which then turned into this reflection phase where then I took the stuff on the left and cleaned it up and really, because clients have a way of describing things, right? And that may or may not translate into how it works on the technical side of things. So you have to convert what they're saying into really how you're going to implement it using the tools that you are familiar with. So this
Mhm.
became, so this was the reflection part. And then this broke down into 5 different steps, which was, the sales and marketing step, the planning step, the trip step, and the post trip step. And
Is there
then
any way we could make this a little bit bigger? I can't.
I actually can't because
Okay, no
yeah,
worries.
I have to keep it slightly, uh, uh,
Yeah, no worries. It's just a
yeah,
great visual. Maybe
yeah,
maybe we can share it after the live stream if that's okay with you, of course. We do have a
yeah.
question about your process
Hmm.
by Sukrit Chandra from
Hmm.
LinkedIn.
Yeah.
He's asking how much time is required to complete the process. So this whole thing, how long did it take you?
Yeah, so every project is different. So this one we started with a discovery phase, which I usually do like a paid engagement. It's a small engagement, which lasts 2 to 3 weeks. Where, as I said, just listen, and the outcome of that is the plan, the development plan. So I present the development plan, and this allows me to, uh, you know, take a moment to decide how long it's going to take, how complicated it is, come up with a good estimation. And then for this project, I estimated 3 months worth of work. So we are in month 3 right now. I think we're going to go over a little bit just because it's so complicated. Like, this is the most complicated project I've worked on. But yeah, end to end, this whole thing was quoted at 3 months of development work.
Mm-hmm. And what tool are you using to create these sort of diagrams and visuals?
So this is this one that you're seeing on the screen right now is using Miro. The one that I showed earlier is this is created using something called Mermaid, and I have a YouTube video on how I create these diagrams from text prompts. So if you want to check that out, so this was created from a text prompt. Yeah. So back here, hopefully that answers the question. Otherwise, reach out after and I can help. Okay, so we go through that and then come up with the design, and then and basically I presented, how we're going to automate whatever we can, and they were happy with the proposal, so we went ahead. So today, so we are basically working on all of this, but I won't be able to go into the details of everything. So I picked like 3-4 things that we can talk about quickly. So the biggest main point was the quotes and proposal. The amount of time that they were spending on this was unbelievable because it's a pretty complicated process. So what they were doing, and of course, Airtable to the rescue here, sorry, I lost my rhythm here. Yeah, so Airtable to the rescue.
Everyone got distracted with the mermaid.
Yeah. Yeah. So obviously they didn't have a database, right? Like, they didn't have anything. Everything was in email. So it's obvious. Like, I don't even have to repeat myself here. We are going to bring in a database, and it can be Airtable, it can be Smart Suite. It doesn't matter. But you need a central system to collect all this information so that other utilities can be built on top of that. So Airtable came to the rescue here, and everything now is centralized here, and all the data is going to live here. They will have access through internal interfaces, and then there will be several other interfaces for external parties. But yeah, so quotes and proposals. This is how they work on proposals, right? So first they collect the trip details from the travelers. Hey, what do you want to do? Where you want to go? How fast-paced you want the trip to be? How long you want the trip to be? What is your dietary restriction? Like, everything, right? So it was done in email. And then they use Excel, and they have a master spreadsheet to plan the trip. So this is where they will enter, day-by-day details. They will enter all the costs. And along the way, they have to call the suppliers or WhatsApp the suppliers to check the availability and pricing. Then they finalize the itinerary. They calculate the trip costs, which again is not that easy because there's different types of costs. There's a per person cost, which is called fixed cost. There's a shared cost. It's just a lot. And then finally, once they had all this detail, they use Canva to create the proposal. It's a lot of work. So this is the spreadsheet that they used previously. As you can see, it's giant. Like, this is like 10% zoomed out.
Yeah.
And then the proposal that they built in Canva looks something like this. So there's a trip overview. This is the itinerary. So this is a table, day by day information, what they're going to do, where they're going to stay, and then cost and terms. So all of this, once they did it in Excel, then they went to Canva and manually. And Canva is not that fast. Like, you have to design and all that stuff. So yeah, so this was the manual workflow, as you can see, a lot. So the first thought, typically that comes to mind, okay, let's use document, like we can automate using document, but not quite, because the data is pretty complicated and you need the data. Data again becomes critical in such situations. You have to get the data right. Once you have the data right, then document or user interfaces is not a problem. So
shout out to our friend Matt Byrne at Document.
Yeah, document is great, but before you can use document, you need your data in place. And where is my? Okay, there we go. So this was the manual workflow, and so as I said, we need to get the data right. So let's talk about the data for a second. What's going on here? So once I zoomed out, once I looked at how they prepared their quote, basically these are the things that stood out, right? So a trip has 1 or more days, of course. Each day can have one or more activity. So this is an activity here I'm defining as maybe they're going on a tour, maybe they need to go to a restaurant, their stay for the night, maybe they need a guide. So all of these things fall under activities. And then each activity has a cost, of course. The cost can be fixed or shared. So fixed costs, for example, hotel per room. So this is per traveler, basically, like every traveler has to pay this price. But for example, a guide could be a shared cost that this is for the entire group, right? And then the total cost of the trip depends on number of travelers, which is variable, because when they create the quote, they don't know if 4 people are going to be joining the trip or 6 people are going to be joining the trip. Maybe it's an agency that has reached out. So they have to create a cost, because the cost will change. If it's only one person, it's going to be very high. But if it's 20 people, then it's going to be fixed costs per person, but then the shared cost will be split into 20 people. So it's just a lot of math involved, and then there's a revenue calculation and all that stuff. So this is what stood out. So this led into this database design, right? So once this hierarchy started to stand out to me, so each code has days are like activities have price has, price could be fixed or shared. Then I came up with this design. So it's pretty much representing this hierarchy here. So you have the quote, you have the day, each day can have one or more details, and details is associated with services, which is services basically the activity. The activity is going to have a price. The service is going to be associated with a supplier, and the supplier can have one or more services. Maybe they provide a tour and they also provide some other activity, or maybe they also provide a car or transportation. So supplier can have one or more activities. Suppliers also need to provide documents, their business registration, their guiding license, and stuff like that. So slowly, this sort of image started to become clear that once you really zoom out and think about this, there's this clear hierarchy that can be leveraged in Airtable using the linked relationships, which you start all the way at the bottom, and you start to add up, and it eventually reaches the quote level, right? So the quote level, using roll-ups, the price goes all the way from here to the quote level. You add the cost, you do some formulas, you do some scripting, and then finally you can create the cost. So this
And
is.
I wonder, Sahil, because I see a question in the chat, and I wonder if that's your answer. Did you pick Airtable over an infinite number of database systems because of the complex logic that these projects required?
Well, there were two considerations. One thing was I want to pick something that my clients can use after the project is done, right? So I want them to be comfortable with the interface, and Airtable, I find people are, especially if they've used Excel before, they're able to pick it up pretty easily. And so that was one. Second was obviously you need a robust system that can handle these relationships, can have, because some of these things can't just be achieved through relationships alone. You need to be able to run some script. So there's some JavaScript involved in some cases, and Airtable is pretty good at handling that. And then just connection with other systems, right? Like document and stuff like that. So yeah, I checked all the boxes, but the most important one was ability to handle complex relationships, and then user-friendly interface so my clients can use it after the fact.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the ERD. So again, like Alex talked about it last time, database design is everything, because if you don't get this right, you're going to be in a big mess for a project like this. So now, so remember, they were doing this in the spreadsheet, but now they're doing it in Airtable. So I created these different views for them: step 1, step 2, step 3. So this is the quotes table, right? So they start with the quotes table. They add the basic information about the trip. Okay, what is this trip about? And the dates and everything. Then they go to step 2, the itinerary step, which is basically linked to the days table. So remember, each quote can have multiple days. So they add the days. Once they get to the day level, they add all the activities, the details, which is one or more. So they will add, okay, we will start here for breakfast. And these are just linking records, right? So they select the breakfast. This is what we're going to do between breakfast and lunch. This is where we're going to have lunch. This is what we're going to do after lunch. So they keep going. They plan the entire day in the days table, which is linked to the details table. And the nice thing here is the details table is linked to the services table, which already has a pricing. So the pricing flows from services to details to day to quote. So it is slowly adding up. So all they have to do from a dropdown is select the activities that they will be doing. So they create the itinerary like this. Then they get to the cost calculation phase. So within the same table, they can enter how many people they want to create a quote for. Maybe they're creating the quote for 6 people, 5 people. So enter the number of travelers here. And then I have a little script that runs, which will then take all the information coming from right here. So the cost is coming from the services, goes to details, goes to days, goes to quote. And then this cost calculation runs, which will then take what is a fixed cost versus a shared cost. And there's several other logic that needs to happen. And it creates a cost, which is then stored in the cost table. Because remember, it can't just be one cost, it can be multiple costs, because we need a cost for 1 traveler, 2 traveler, 3 traveler, and up till number of travelers they add here. So all these entries are then made in the cost table. And then once they have the cost, now we get to document. So now we have the itinerary, now we have the cost, now we have all the details, and then we run a script. So now all of this data, as you can see, is sent from Airtable to document, and we get to this output, the output that they were earlier using Canva for. Now document is creating this proposal. So of course, we created the template in document, but we have to send this data in a very particular format that document expects. So this information is sent individually. Then we have a list of days with all the details. We have the cost information. We have the terms, and even the terms are not static. Like there's some standard terms, but then there could be in this trip, this is included, but this is not included. So they select that all in Airtable before hitting the button, and then they get this document. So that was a mouthful. I'll take a pause here for a second before we get to the next one for any questions.
Absolutely, yes. I was just checking the chat. Richard Gower says, requirements, database design, love it, speaking my language. I use OOUX as the process for identifying objects in the problem domain and the relationship ultimately moving to the database. Yes, Richard, if you were here with us last week, we dedicated a whole event, a whole episode to database design, because yes, it is so very important. And if I can quote another member of our community, every Tuesday we host our weekly hangouts in our Discord. And Daniel, this is a quote that really resonated with me. He said, automating chaos. So if you don't have a good database design, if you have chaos, automating chaos will only give you chaos faster.
Mm-hmm.
And that is so true.
Absolutely. Yeah, because once you start to add the tables without really thinking about the design. So what we do now is, if you have to consider a new table, we go all the way back to the ERD in the Miro board and start there and see how does it fit? Does it fit? Does it need to even happen? And so if we go directly in Airtable and add whatever we need to add, that's just going to lead to chaos.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, so let's keep going here. So the next one is supplier management, right? So for suppliers, so remember, let me just go back quickly here. Suppliers provide services, and services have a cost associated with them. So one option is that what they have been doing until now is they email the supplier and they ask them, hey, what's the price? And then the price stays in the email. They had a Dropbox with some documents, but it was all over the place, right? So what we did is we turned the tables, and we, for the suppliers, created a fill-out form. And it's actually 2 forms. One is the onboarding form and one is the services form, because services can be 1 or more. So now the suppliers are responsible to fill out this form and provide their service details along with the pricing information. And then that goes directly into Airtable, so that when they come to creating the quote, that information already exists there, and all they have to do is select from the dropdown for which service they're going to opt for from which supplier, right? So now suppliers are responsible. So suppliers need to provide financial documents, and they provide 1 or more services, and then each service is associated with a dollar tag, right? So now they, instead of replying an email, they fill the fill-out form, and that information will automatically be ingested. And so it's basically self-service at this point, right? They add the service, and they can come back and update using the fill-out update URL. They can update the details when necessary. They can upload the documents. And the additional benefit of this is, using Airtable enters a view automation. Basically, we can send them a reminder that your document expired or your pricing terms expired, so please go and update. So basically, it's a filter in Airtable by date. So if the date is in the past, the service will enter that view. Once it enters that view, we trigger a notification that they need to take an action, and we send them the link in email and WhatsApp. So now this part is also automated, so that when they come to the planning phase, they know whether a price has been expired. And if it has expired, then they know they can't really trust it and they have to reach out. So if the suppliers are proactive enough, they will, keep it updated. But this is, going to be some training on their part. So this part we'll see. But the mechanics are there, the automation is there. But of course, there's a human element involved, which is suppliers do need to keep it up to date, which they're going to work on training their suppliers. But long story short, they don't have to reach out via email. They can just send them this link, and the suppliers provide all the details.
Mhm.
So the architecture as it's evolving, so you have the form, you have the database. We actually haven't used Make a lot so far because Airtable automations themselves have been able to do everything for us. We might use it for a couple of things, and one of them is sending WhatsApp messages, because in some of the countries, the suppliers rely on WhatsApp. They don't use email. So we're going to send them, for example, your document expired or your price expired. Those automations are going to get triggered through Airtable into the supplier's WhatsApp account. And so that's the supplier management. So instead of email and manual communication, suppliers can do self-service. And then finally, I'll just quickly wrap this one up. Traveler data. So travelers so far also were being, reached out via email that, hey, can you give me your passport details? When are you arriving? When are you departing? All that information was collected using email. And, I think they did some printouts or something like that. But we built a client portal. So once the client has paid for the trip, they get access to the client portal, and that's where they go and they can enter all the information. So, for example, who's going to be rooming together, travel insurance, passport details, arrival, departure. There's so much information.
And when you say portal, because I saw I saw a software thing there. Did you use Airtable interface, or did you create the front end on software?
No, this is for client access. So this is in software.
Right. Yeah.
So this is in software. So as soon as they pay, they get added to software. They'll get an email that they can access the portal now. And in the portal, they will see some action items. And so all this information, you might be thinking, it's easy to collect, right? Like, you just give them a form, you get the information, no problem, trivial. But on the internal side, the biggest problem was the rooming information. So they have to create a spreadsheet with rooming information. So room 1, these 2 people are going to be staying. Room 2, these 2 people are going to be staying. Room 3, only 1 person is staying. This is their passport details. So they had to collate this information. So what we did is using the fill out subform feature, the primary point of contact is now responsible for creating this instead of this company. So they're just sent this form, and they add a room, they add the travelers, they add the traveler information, and then using the page designer in Airtable, we are able to generate this rooming list, which can then can be sent to the hotels that, hey, these are the people coming on this date. This is their passport number. This is their name. So this was being done manually again in spreadsheets earlier. Now turn the tables, travelers are responsible to take care of it, and then hit a button, get the sheet, send it to the hotel. So Airtable is like a Swiss Army knife, as I like to call it. It is doing a lot of stuff for us. So this has been an interesting project, pretty complicated, but rewarding at the same time. So that's it. That's all I wanted to present today and give some inspiration as to how Airtable can be helpful, and we can get into Q&A now.
Absolutely. And, thank you so much for sharing that. And it's exciting to hear that, it's such a huge project, but just the way that you broke it down into little steps can really help. Because, the first slide that you showed, you got all these data that you're not collecting and everything is kind of living in your inbox right now. That would have been a massive red flag to me. Be like, no, no, I'll pass. But the fact that you're like, okay, let's have a look. Let's see how we can make this a little bit simpler, break it down into little steps. And I really loved your process and the way that you have that sort of strategy of let's have a call and listening. So important to listen about your to your clients' pain points before strategizing, and that was really cool. And just the way that you're approaching everything.
That's a critical step. These calls were long. They were all recorded. We used AI to analyze, see if we missed any requirements. Added obviously the human element, understanding the pain points. So, and also that helps build trust with the client that, okay, this person is going to really listen and help.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So yes, let's open the Q&A. Let me add a beautiful thing up here. And people, if you're enjoying the event. Our community is free. It's free to join. But if you want to support what we're doing and keep on having these beautiful episodes, do hit like and subscribe. You know what to do with social media. And so let's open the floor to our community and our questions here. So I can see, I saw a question there from LinkedIn from Jacob. How do you set client expectations with software pricing? Airtable alone is expensive for many small businesses, let alone a whole tech stack.
Yeah, no, great question. So that's a big consideration, especially with the travel client. They said they may or may not have business every month. Sometimes they have a lot of business, sometimes they have no business. So they were like, we don't want to spend during the months where we have no business. I was like, well, it's not going to work like that. If you have a tool like Airtable, you are looking at a monthly cost, then the WhatsApp API, and then all these things. But I present them all the options, and I also give them the free options, right? Like fill out, if you are okay with the fill out branding, it's free. They're like, yeah, you're fine. We don't care. Softer, I told them up to 50 people, it's free. If you go up to above 50, which means your business is growing, at that point, you'll have to pay. So they were understandable. Okay, up to 50 travelers, it's free. And then you have to make some trade-offs. So what we're doing is, once the trip is over, we're going to take down the access. So we're going to remove the user. So that keeps the user under 50 for as long as possible. But again, software branding is there. It's obvious that you're using. So these are little trade-offs. Airtable, they're sharing the password within their team. They're not creating different users. So they're only paying for one seat. So they understand there's costs, and they also understand if they grow, they can add more money and get more access. So it's a discussion for sure, and it's a big discussion sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I hope that helps, Jacob. Let us know if you've got any follow-up questions. Question from Stephen. Can you brief me a little bit about your data structure schema? How do you design the relationship/link?
I guess I start with the end in mind. Like, what is it I'm trying to go for? So, like, what's the outcome we want to achieve through this database? So that's number one. Second is looking at the future. So maybe today suppliers only have one service. So we could have kept the price in the same table as the suppliers. But after poking, it turned out that, okay, maybe a supplier could have multiple services. So then it was obvious that pricing cannot be in the supplier table. It has to be in its own table, which is a one-to-many relationship. So you dig into questions like that. And then also, as I said, my goal was to get to this automated quoting system, automated proposal system. So I had to keep in mind, how am I going to get there and still keep the process relatively simple for the client, because they are going to be using this, right? So those things. And then you kind of put it on paper and you run through some scenarios. Can I do this? Can I get this data? How am I going to get this data? And then you kind of tweak it until all the requirements are satisfied. Okay, either this way or that way, I am going to get all my data. So that's how I go about it. We did have to. So the one that I showed you was the 5th version, not the 1st version.
Yeah, as you were explaining all that, it gave me an idea for another completely different interview. But one day you will have to tell me all about your nightmare clients. Like,
yeah, that
I'm
happens.
sure you've seen it all. I'm sure you've seen it all.
Yep.
Speaking of outcome, I saw a really interesting question here from Laura. How much time per day, week do you think was saved after setting up the new system? So speaking about the outcome, what's the effect of automation for these small, medium-sized businesses?
Yeah, I don't have a quantified data yet, but I know the impact is significant. It's huge. The clients have mentioned it to me several times. Just to give you an idea, currently, when a trip is happening, they are sometimes staying up. They are basically traveling with the travelers, even if they are not on the trip, because they call the restaurant that the group is about to arrive, or they call the supplier, the flight is about to land. So they're literally on the trip, even though they're at home. But now what's going to happen is, because we have a reservations table, the reservation will have a time. Reservation is attached to a supplier. We have a view in Airtable which will enter the reservation is within 60 minutes. When it enters that view, it's going to trigger a WhatsApp message to the supplier that this is happening. So the clients can sleep, or the clients don't have to be on the trip. So that alone, I hope gives you an idea of how much time it's going to save them, and energy, and involvement in every single trip, so they can work on the business, not in the business, which is what they were doing so far.
Amazing. Absolutely. Work on the business, not in it. Not
Mhm.
imagine having to follow all the individual groups on a trip all
Yeah,
the
yeah.
time.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And speaking of these customers, a question from Richard. I don't think it's odd. It's a really good question. How do you find these customers, small to medium size, that have lots of manual process that need help with automation?
Yeah, it's been a journey. Not gonna lie. I started creating content on LinkedIn, just educational content, like about 2.5 years ago. So that has been helpful. I've done presentations like this. So this client I actually found through another. They came to me through another presentation that I did for it. A tool called We Travel, which is a tool for travel companies. So I did a presentation on Zapier automation for them, and they saw me there, so they reached out. So mostly, yeah, it's through social media, and also, yeah, I'm listed as an expert, for example, on the software portal. So some people reach out from there. That is very helpful. So yeah, it's all over the place.
Yeah,
But
basically show off your work, show
show
what
the
you can
work. Yeah,
do,
basically
network.
show the recipe, and some people might buy the recipe, and some people might ask you to cook.
Yeah, exactly. But I also think, Sahil, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it's how much you give back to the community. Like I've seen you, like you interacted with Max signing 100 Days of No Code. You've come to our, this is the second time that you're here with us here at NoCodeOps. So what goes around comes around. Like the more you give, the more you get as well. So do show your work, do show what you can do, but also be a good global community member. Do help people because you never know, like
You never know.
networking.
It's so
Yeah.
crazy. Like sometimes it's like 6 months later, someone reach out that, hey, I saw your video. Like I have a YouTube channel as well. It's yeah, you never know how it's crazy how internet works.
Yeah, it's a ripple effect. Really good. All right, let me see. I saw another question from Rahul. And maybe Rahul, this is his strategy. Let's see. Using so many tools at the same time could be a problem for the client to maintain the whole system. They need you forever. Maybe this is Sahil's strategy. They will need him forever. Maybe not.
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course, the longer the relationship I have with the client, the better for me, no doubt. But at the same time, I don't want to be unreasonable. I understand it's a small business, and they can't afford to spend. So, for example, for this client, this was their question. They said, like, okay, when this is done, who's going to help us? I was like, well, I'm not going anywhere. So I offer, monthly sort of support packages, or I off, or if they are not willing to pay a monthly retainer, then I give them an hourly price that they can reach out to me at any time. I will respond within 24 to 48 hours, and I just invoice them at the end of the month. So it just depends. But yeah, it is true. Some clients are really savvy, and they're like, okay, we got this, and we will take it from here. So it just depends. And if people do need you, and if they see the value that you bring to the table, and uh, you know how much you have been helpful, they are happy to pay, because they know that it's about the relationship, right?
Absolutely. And I hope that also answers your question, Steven, because he was asking about, what happened after you go live, or what happens after you go live? Do you have a retainer? So yeah.
Yeah. So also, just to add, in the proposal, I always build a 30-day support period. So after the go live 30 days, anything's come up, I basically am responsible. And then I always give an extended support option, that after the 30 day, if you want to buy another 30 days or 60 or 90 days, that's an option as well. So I always include that in the proposal.
hmm Another question from Richard. What kind of dashboard and reports did you create for the customer to give them oversight of their business?
For this one, no dashboards yet. I think I had it in the proposal as a higher tier option, dashboards and reports, and they said that they don't need that right now. So it wasn't built into the cost, but if they need, definitely Airtable interfaces will be leveraged to create dashboards. For another client, a construction company, for them, sales dashboard is everything. That's how they live and breathe. They have win-loss ratio, they have total expected value coming in next month, pending prices. So yeah, sales dashboards are also pretty common. For this particular client, they did not want a dashboard just yet.
hmm Question from Melissa. Melissa from LinkedIn. Isn't it difficult to assign tasks and track if everyone uses the same Airtable login?
So we're not tracking tasks in Airtable. Airtable will only be used by the owners for planning the trips and the quotes and proposals. For the task for the team, so for example, when the proposal is accepted, the next step is the preparation phase where they start making reservations, right? So for that, what happens is they change the status of a trip in Airtable, and that triggers an automation, and that creates tickets in Trello board assigned to their team members. So the team is working off of Trello. They have some templated Trello cards, which are created for each trip, which has a huge checklist. And so the accountant has a checklist. The ops member has a checklist to call the suppliers and make the reservations. So yeah, so they're not logging. So, and again, this was a cost decision. Trello is free to use. So we are using Trello for the task management, not Airtable.
Mm-hmm. Brilliant. Another question from John Keane. Do you use AI to help with your schema, or is it all manual? I've had success using AI for ERD data, which I then create a diagram with.
At this point, I can't even remember when I don't use AI. ChatGPT is always open. I'm always talking to it. What I do is I have a chat per client. So it remembers the context, right? So if I need to go back and talk about this project, I will go back to this particular chat. So it remembers everything, right? It does get slow after a while because once it gets longer, then it starts to lose it. But
do
yeah.
you happen to find yourself telling ChatGPT like, come on, don't you remember we spoke about this? Because that's me. Sometimes it's like we already spoke about this.
I don't do that, but I do say please a lot.
Yes, always. You never know. Always say please and thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, I definitely use it. What I did is sometimes I'll take the screenshot of the ERD, upload it to ChatGPT, and say critically analyze this design, and it's able to do that. But sometimes I also found that it wasn't able to understand the arrows, like it didn't understand as a one-to-many relationship, so I had to correct it. So you just have to be careful. Don't take it blindly, but it's good to get perspective, especially when you're working alone.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I saw a question here from Thali, the prompt scientist. Would you be okay sharing your pricing for this project to our audience, maybe privately? Because this is just a recurrent topic in our Discord. Obviously, we have a lot of like consultants and agencies, but obviously this is also sensitive data, so maybe privately.
It's tough. I've already told this client that if anyone asks you how much it costed, you have to say 3x of what I charge them, because I'm still trying to get it right. Like after we got into the details, it was just way more complicated than I envisioned it to be. So I was also having a chat with Dan Lehman from automationhelpers.com because they have been doing really well. So I wanted to understand how they price, and they actually just do hourly. Because they say it saves time in you don't have to build a proposal, you don't have to do all of the discovery and all that stuff. You just get to work from day one, and they just bill hourly. But obviously, those are very different clients who are willing to pay hourly without any end in mind, right? So that's something I'm considering as well, if I should also go hourly, because sometimes with these projects I get stressed that, I ask them for this much amount, but it's taking so much time, so it's not really adding up for me as a business. It's like I'm basically you have a way to tell if you're making profit or loss, and sometimes I feel that because my investment is my time, and when I track my time, how much time I'm spending, so I get to a stage where I'm like, okay, I've already spent all the time that I budgeted, and now I'm going into loss. So it's very hard. So I'm really considering the hourly option after talking to Dan.
It's really tricky. Do you know Formless by Typeform? Is Formless
Yes.
AI?
Yeah.
I've seen like more and more people from our community using this tool, because whereas before you used to have, on your typical agency site or consultancy site, you used to have the usual form that says book a consultation call with me. And so what happens there is that you end up wasting a lot of time chatting with potential clients that end up not being a really good fit for you, or having all this sort of like flexible pricing, like, okay, do I charge for the hour, for how much time I'm actually saving the client with automation? So it was all very like, it's always been a blurred line, and I guess that's also why it's such a common topic in our community. But I've seen more and more people using formless to kind of direct the client thanks to AI. So what this tool does basically, the client interacts with it. So you train it on your pricing module, on what you can offer as a consultant or an agency, and then the client interacts with the tool, and then you almost kind of decide, okay, based on the answers and based from what I can see, do I accept this client or not? So that's what I've seen, like the latest trend to be.
Yeah, something I have to look
Yeah.
into. But yeah, it's very hard. Like even as a software engineer back in the day, estimating projects for my manager or for my product manager, like it's very hard. So I'm really considering the hourly option. I'm also considering the productized option. So for example, I know what a typical CRM requires. So if I just price it that, okay, you pay me X amount and I'll build a CRM for you with these features, that's another option I'm considering, but I don't have it right. Not gonna lie.
Hmm. Yeah. There's a couple suggestions here in the chat from Laura. Maybe you could do a hybrid sort of package that includes a certain amount of hours, and time needed beyond that is billed hourly. If you have any suggestions, if you want to exchange ideas, do connect with Sahil on LinkedIn. I'm gonna share his profile in the chat now.
Yeah, it's a great
Um,
option. Thanks, Laura.
oh no, that's my profile. You don't want to connect with me because chances are you already are. Alrighty, let me put it here in the chat. And as I kind of scroll through more questions, Alicia, hi Alicia. She says, this pricing conversation is so helpful, makes me feel better. Then you also find it hard. Absolutely, absolutely. We're all in the
Yeah,
same boat.
yeah, it's the same as the salary conversation.
Always.
Yeah.
And in terms of like recurring conversations, or I guess for me, the question would be, because I've seen how talented you are, how successful you are in the NoCo space. You're obviously attracting the right folks, the right clients as well. What is missing from the NoCode space, from the automation space? What can we do more of as a community as well? Like we're NoCodeOps is a tool agnostic community. We're trying to help operations people get equipped with no-code skills. What else can we do?
Great question. I'll have to reflect on this a little bit. Education always has been my go-to, right? Continue sharing what I'm learning. Um, I think I think maybe for the young folks, for people who are just starting, maybe out of college, I can sense. I also went to a university to conduct a class, and I can sense that they're very hungry to learn, but maybe they don't have the right guidance because academia is very weird. It's different. So I'm actually trying to connect more with that crowd to kind of get them started and almost offer like free mentorship or internships, like paid internships, uh, to help them learn because yeah, I don't think they have the right guidance, to be honest. And no code is so new. That's
Mhm.
one area definitely we can think about. And then in general, I think one mistake I also made initially with no code was like so easy, anyone can do it. Well, of course, yeah, I have a background as a software engineer, easy for me to say, but it's not that easy. So you need to get the basics and fundamentals down still. And I've really changed my messaging to focus on that personally. So I think yeah, when people see no code for the first time, they get excited that anyone can do it. But once they get into the deep end, and they're like, okay, it's more complicated than I thought. So maybe that's another thing to keep in mind. But I'll think
Absolutely.
more
When
about
you
this.
when you go beyond the MVP and life happens.
Yeah, yeah,
It's like, oh yes, I'm a no coder. No, I'm not yet.
yeah.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Sahil. I'm sure we could stay here and chat way longer, but I am mindful of your time, and I'm grateful that you've accepted to be here with us again. And I know that this won't be the last time because
For
we're
sure.
cooking.
Yeah.
Me and Sahil and a couple more amazing people. We're cooking something special for this community,
Mhm.
so you'll definitely see him again, and you will obviously see me next week, next Thursday. All
Awesome.
right. Well, thank you so much, Sahil. Take
Yeah, thank
care.
you. And thanks
And
everyone for the questions.
absolutely
This
do
was fun.
connect with Sahil. Check out NoCode University. Check out his new YouTube channel even more. And yeah, do reach out if you have any more questions, if you want to join the community, anything else. You know where to find us. Bye, everyone. Take care.
Yeah. Right.